Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be another debunking video. Leopold the Brave has this weird theory that the anthropomorphic animals that exist in the Crash Bandicoot series are naturally occurring, and I don't agree with him at all. And he even says at the end of his video, if you don't agree with me, let me know why. So, right off the bat, I'm not throwing shade at the guy. You guys saw I made another video trying to debunk him. And this is not a flame war. I don't want people going, yeah, Leopold's stupid, yada yada. People have fun with theories. I have fun with theories. I personally don't agree with him, and I'm going to explain why I don't agree with him. So don't go to his channel and tell him he's stupid or anything, because that's not what I'm going for. This is all in good fun. So I'm going to play a couple clips of his theory and then try and debunk it with my research and information. I'm not going to play his whole video because it's over 7 minutes long, and if I'm stopping it every time he makes something and a point that I don't agree with, it's going to end up being a long video. So I'm going to play this first clip.
For those who don't know, my theory was on how the Evolvo-ray worked. Because initially everyone just seemed to go along with the idea that Crash was originally just a regular Bandicoot down on all fours, like a normal animal and everything, before the Evolvo-ray. And my theory was that Crash was actually already an anthropomorphic bipedal Looney Tunes-esque character before the Evolvo-ray, and that the Evolvo-ray was simply meant to enhance speed and strength, and not actually change the shape of the creature or character it was working on.
So that's his theory. And right off the bat, this is what I want to show to debunk what he's saying. This is taken from the opening cutscene of the scrapped intro to Crash Bandicoot 1. You have a alligator, a warthog, a koala, a monkey, an iguana, and what I think is a potaroo. I originally thought that this was a Komodo dragon, but upon looking up Charles Zambilis, it's either Zambilis or Zambias, I saw his sketch for the iguana, which looks almost identical to this. You can see his monkey sketch is what they were basing this on, and there's the warthog. So yes, I understand that this cutscene was not in the game, but it was developed and finished. Why would they make this cutscene showing the origin of all these characters and then completely flip it once the game comes out? So here's all the characters, and if you go through Charles's work, you can actually find what these animals become. So as you can see, they all get zapped by the Evolvo-ray, and then this is what they become. For the iguana, you have an iguana character. For the monkey, you have a monkey character. There's Koala Kong right there. Then for the boar, or warthog, you have a sumo wrestler warthog. And then I believe that the one on the bottom there is Pinstripe. And the alligator in the other shot would have ended up being this crazy alligator with a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. And then I want to read what was posted in the description of that video. It says, "This video is a test animation that was done for Crash Bandicoot, produced by Universal Animation early in the development of the game. It was based on ideas for where we were going with the IP at that time. It was probably too ambitious in nature and was also trying to be humorous. It was never used or even embedded in the game as a hidden Easter egg treat. Once Universal Interactive Studios licensed the game to Sony for publication, Sony did not want it utilized since they were heavily pushing the 3D agenda." So it wasn't scrapped because it had nothing to do with what they were thinking of. It was in line with what they were thinking at the time. And as you can see from the sketches, they came out in '95. So right when it was around the time that it was called Willy the Wombat. So clearly the core idea was there, but they didn't want a cartoon segment. They wanted a 3D animation. So while it wasn't in the game, and it's technically not canon, the idea that they totally did a 180 and changed all their ideas makes no sense. Like, that cutscene might as well have been in the game, because that's what they were going for. Another thing, Tiny and the Komodo brothers were in that opening, so even if they did decide to use that cartoon, they would have had to at least edit the ending there a bit. But yeah, so that's his first part, and that was my debunk. Now I want to play this next bit.
And the whole reason I came up with that theory is because it's pretty much impossible for every single animal character in the Crash Bandicoot universe to be a result of Cortex's experiments. They had to have always been characters standing on 2 feet, wearing clothes, and talking like people.
So he's stating because there's no evidence against it, it shifts the burden of the proof away from, the one making the claim. He says that it's impossible for Cortex to create all the mutants, but he doesn't give a reason why it's impossible. Why is it impossible for Cortex to have created all the mutants? So he's trying to say it's impossible because, and he wants proof that they were all created by Cortex, but he needs to prove that they weren't before he says that it's impossible. So let's move on. Okay, here's his next point.
Even all the way back in the first game with Crash Bandicoot himself, my theory is supported. The entire game opens up with Crash being zapped by the Evolvo-ray, but as we can see before it happens when he's laying there on the table, he's still already an anthropomorphic Looney Tunes-esque character. Now you could chalk that up to technical limitations at the time, not being able to have a regular Bandicoot model transform into Crash, but they kept it the same in the Insane trilogy. Now I've had some people respond to this saying, oh, well, maybe he already got zapped once before off-screen before the cutscene started and we just didn't see. But those are just baseless headcanons and assumptions out of nowhere.
Those aren't baseless headcanons and assumptions out of nowhere.
Only is there no...
Because we actually have a clip from one of the flashback tapes from Crash Bandicoot 4 that proves prior to the opening cutscene, Crash had already been mutated. I'm going to play the clip now. It's Cortex speaking.
The Bandicoot bipedalization was a success. If he survives my trials of wit and strength, he'll be promoted to General of my army.
You mean you'll brainwash him, Master?
Tomato, potato.
So as you can hear from that audio clip, Crash was transformed into a bipedal animal prior to him being trained. So him, in the opening, he has already been transformed. So I'm going to continue on and let him continue with his thoughts.
No evidence supporting that, but there's evidence against it. The evidence is Ripperoo. You see, the reason Ripperoo is the way that he is because he actually got zapped twice by the Evolvo-ray, which turned him insane and turned him blue. In case you haven't noticed, Crash isn't blue, and it was the Cortex Vortex failing that turned Crash insane, not the Evolvo-ray.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there, because that's inaccurate. Let me pull up the manual for Crash Bandicoot 1 and show you Ripperoo's bio. It says, Ripperoo, crazy, demented, not all there. These are kind words to describe an animal who has undergone 1 or 2 zaps of the old Evolvo-ray too many. So it's not saying 2 zaps created Ripperoo, it's saying that 2 zaps too many. 1 or 2 too many. So we don't know how many zaps it takes. Crash could take 100, and maybe Ripperoo took 102, and the 102nd one is the one that set him off. So it is never stated anywhere, as far as I'm aware, that 2 zaps of an Evolvo-ray will turn you insane. And as far as him saying Crash isn't blue, I know this isn't canon, but check this out. We have a non-canon skin of what Crash would look like if he got zapped too many times with the Evolvo-ray. But anyway, let's get back to what Leopold's saying. Okay, and here's his next point.
Also, the extra Evolvo-ray zap didn't change Ripperoo's shape at all. He's not some extra mutated super strong kangaroo, he's still a scrawny cartoon character. He's just blue now too. Bam! Theory supported. What else?
No. Okay, so he said that the Evolvo-ray didn't transform him into a big, strong, monster-looking thing. This is also from the manual of the first game. It says Cortex created Pinstripe Potoroo, a cross between a local furry omnivore and several cheesy gangster movies. So, Pinstripe already went through the Evolvo-ray, and he is not a giant monster. He is just a slender-built anthropomorphic character, just like Crash. And here's another example of a non-giant monster-like character, Komodo Joe. So, because Ripperoo didn't get big and hulking, that doesn't disprove that he went through the Evolvo-ray. So anyway, let's see what he says next.
Well, how about Tawna and Pinstripe, because neither of them went through the Evolvo-ray.
See, this is what I'm saying about his headcanon. He's projecting his beliefs and making it seem like facts. He just said Pinstripe and Tawna didn't go through the Evolvo-ray. So let's see what he says.
Don't worry, it's pretty simple to explain. For Tawna, the whole point of the game is rescuing her before she gets experimented on. After all, when Crash escapes, Cortex says prepare the female Bandicoot.
That's because he wants to prepare her to go into the Cortex vortex, not the Evolvo-ray.
Which means she hasn't been tested at all yet. But she's already an Anthro character, theory supported.
No, theory not supported. She's already an Anthro character because she went through the Evolvo-ray.
Now, I've had some people who disagree with this theory respond to that saying that they just evolved her before Crash and the cutscene started, and then they were just preparing her for the brainwashing. But that makes no sense. Why would they split her experiment in half and do all of Crash's experiments in between it? There's no real rhyme or reason for that, and people are just grasping at straws to disprove the theory.
No, it's because all of the mutants were created prior to the game beginning. Crash wasn't just created. Tawna wasn't just created. All of Cortex's commandos already exist prior to the game starting. So I don't know what he's going on about. Let's continue on.
Next up is Pinstripe. Not only do we get a tiny tidbit of support for my theory at the beginning of the Insane Trilogy opening because we can see Pinstripe's opposable thumbs through the cage. Why would he have regular thumbs if he was just a normal Potoroo? But the fact that he's even in the cage still supports my theory as well, because Crash is being experimented on, Tawna's up next being prepared, and Pinstripe's still in the cage. So clearly their experimentation order is Crash, Tawna, Pinstripe, but since Crash broke the Cortex vortex, they had to halt all experiments. Meaning Tawna and Pinstripe never went through the Evolvo-ray, because again, why split the experiment in half and make them stronger if they weren't ready to be brainwashed and put under your control yet?
Okay, so now he's going into meta reasons. He said, why would Pinstripe's Anthro hands be in the cage? And let me show you this clip of a free camera mode.
Intriguing things to come out of this is the cages where all those animals are stored. Mostly you're going to find unique models just for the eyes of those characters, making them essentially floating masks. However, there is one character that's holding the bars. And funny enough, the hands that are holding those bars with a sign under it saying Potoroo is in fact the series staple Potoroo character, Pinstripe. I guess it can be inferred because the eyes that the player's meant to see is in fact Pinstripe's if you were to match it up with the character model. But the arms grabbing those bars belongs to the full character model of Pinstripe, who is stretched out and hidden from the player. And his Tommy gun is here too because it's supposed to be attached to the character. But since they need to use the hands for the bars, they stored the Tommy gun way below the map. All of which is happening when you're watching the very first opening cutscene of Crash Bandicoot 1.
So, the hands that are on the cage were the developers saving time. They just grabbed Pinstripe and they stretched him all crazy so hands could be on the cage. That isn't supposed to actually represent Pinstripe. Pinstripe, at that point in time, had already been created. And I'm not just saying that without any evidence. Let me show you how I can prove that Pinstripe was already created prior to the opening of the game. I believe it's in the generator room. You come up to this door. It says CEO, Pinstripelli Potorodi. So this is Pinstripe. Pinstripe he's running his mafia with his Don name there. He's guarding the generator, and he is Cortex's bodyguard. What's more likely? Pinstripe was already created, already mutated, and is being a minion already, having a mafia, working for Cortex, and having his face on a door? Or do you think Crash jumped out the window from the first island, then Cortex decided to create Pinstripe and his mafia, and slap Pinstripe's face on random doors before Crash got to the third island? It's blatantly obvious that Pinstripe has been around prior to Crash. And then he says that Crash broke the Cortex Vortex so no one could go through. It says right in the opening cutscene, Bandicoot 1.0. So that is the first Bandicoot to go through the Cortex Vortex. Pinstripe already went through, Koala Kong already went through, Ripperoo already went through, everyone already went through. Crash was the first Bandicoot to go through, to be his general of his Cortex Commandos. His Cortex Commandos were already created. And furthermore, just to be even more crazy with continuity, Pinstripe's hands weren't even on the bars in the original game. So that's just a Vicarious Vision inclusion. Okay, let's go and see what his next point is.
This also explains why Pinstripe uses a Tommy gun instead of his own strength like the other bosses, because he never got a strength boost from the Evolvo-ray. He needed a weapon to take on Crash. So bam, Tawna and Pinstripe, also evidence. They never went through the Evolvo-ray, yet they're still bipedal anthropomorphic Looney Tunes characters.
Okay, he just said that the reason Pinstripe uses his gun is because he never went through the Evolvo-ray. So we have Koala Kong, who throws boulders at Crash. That's a weapon, and he's clearly a mutated animal. So you're telling me he didn't go through the Evolvo-ray because he uses a weapon? He didn't get a strength boost? Tiny Tiger uses a trident. That's another weapon. Even the Komodo brothers have weapons. So using a weapon doesn't disprove anything, and that's not evidence. I'm sorry. So far, nothing Leopold has said is correct. He's using his headcanon to try and push his agenda. Okay, let's continue on.
Not to mention the fact that Pinstripe is also a mob boss and has an entire gang. Where did they all come from? Theory supported. And
so he keeps doing this. Just because something isn't explained, he's using it as evidence to support his side of the debate. It would be one thing if it was proven that they were not evolved, and then he said, see, look, they're not evolved. But it wasn't stated, so the burden of proof needs to come from your end if you're trying to debate this. You need to prove that they weren't evolved. You can't ask people to prove it for you. If one of the characters is evolved, it's assumed that all the other ones are evolved too. Like, I don't understand how him bringing up the Mafia benefits his side of the debate at all. If anything, it supports against it, because Pinstripe had been around prior to Crash. He's Cortex's gunman. He's Cortex's bodyguard. He watches Cortex's generator. And he has his own Mafia. Okay. We're almost done here. He's got about a minute left.
my final point is every other animal character in the entire series. There's Pasadena, there's Viscount, there's the Nitro Squad because Oxide's appearance in Twinsanity confirms CTR is canon. Also in Twinsanity we have Rusty Walrus and Farmer Ernest. It's impossible for them to have been mutated because Cortex was frozen for 3 years prior.
Okay, so this also lacks sense, in my opinion. He brings up Farmer Ernest and Rusty Walrus and says they couldn't exist because Cortex was frozen 3 years. So, why couldn't Farmer Ernest have existed prior to the events in Twinsanity? Just because we first meet him in Twinsanity doesn't mean he was created in Twinsanity. All we know about Farmer Ernest is he has a farm, he has chickens, he grows Wumpa fruit, and he goes to the fruit marketplace. So there's nothing stating that he was just created. And as far as Rusty Walrus goes, he's the cook on Engine's battleship, and there's tons of anthropomorphic rhino soldiers. It's just like, it's all just beating him over the head, mutants, 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 and for some reason he's digging his heels and saying that they aren't mutants. He also covers a couple other characters. He says Pasadena, the Viscount, the Trophy Girls, etc., etc. I agree. It would be nice to have flat out stated, yes, these were all mutated by Cortex. But if it isn't stated, you shouldn't jump ship completely and say, oh, they just occur naturally. If they occurred naturally in the universe of Crash, there would be way more of them. We have, what, probably 20 named characters that are anthropomorphic animals? And then we have all the other random little... We have skunks, we have armadillos, we have vultures, we have turtles. Like, it's just crazy for me to think that he thinks his debate holds any water. I skipped ahead because then he started talking about the evil twins, but the evil twins went to the 10th dimension, and it doesn't add or subtract from this debate. They weren't mutated by the Evolvo-ray, but no one ever claimed that they were mutated by the Evolvo-ray, so he's adding extra information to make it seem like his theory makes more sense than it does. Okay, and here's his last bit.
It's just completely impossible for every cartoony animal character in the Crash Bandicoot universe to be a result of Cortex's experiments. They had to have always been that way, including our heroes Crash and Coco.
And to quote Leopold the Brave,
but those are just baseless headcanons and assumptions out of nowhere.
I know I'm being sassy now, but I don't like that he has so many followers and he's pushing this false narrative. I mean, like I said, I only have 400-something followers, and my views aren't anywhere near his views, so it's just aggravating when someone who has a following in a fandom spreads false information. And this is his last statement. I will play the last statement, and I will give my final thoughts.
But now there's one final question that needs answering. If Crash and Coco and everyone else were already anthropomorphic bipedal Looney Tunes-esque characters from the start, then why are there still regular animals in the world? And the answer is, there just are. It's completely normal for them to coexist. I mean, look at the Sonic games. They're full of anthropomorphic, crazy-looking characters, but they still have completely regular animals too. In fact, Sonic is part of Crash's inspiration, as well as Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouse cartoons, which also have the same thing going on, with cartoony bipedal anthropomorphic dogs like Goofy and then regular dogs like Pluto. It's not unheard of, and it's perfectly fine for these two types of different animals, cartoony and regular, to coexist. They don't need any extra explanations, and my theory still stands completely fine. Now the whole flashback...
So he says completely different franchises have anthropomorphic animals and normal animals coexisting. So in the Crash universe, it can make sense. That doesn't... You can't debate like that. You can't be like, One Piece was inspired by Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Z characters can go Super Saiyan. So therefore, characters in One Piece can go Super Saiyan, because it was inspired by that franchise. That's not how things work. So had he said at the end of it, that's just my opinion, that's what I think, it would be fine. But for him to constantly say there's plot holes that need to be filled is incorrect, because there's been plenty of information that we've seen and have been told and have read that contradict what he is saying. And if he just read the manuals, he would be fine. So that's everything. I've said my piece. I don't think he's correct. I feel that I've debunked him pretty well. And if you guys disagree with me, that's fine. Leave comments telling me why. If you agree with me, tell me why. And for the secret word of the day, let's say Leopold. We'll use Leopold as our secret word. Okay, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.